Today, folks, we're going to talk about electrical diagnostics on, well, lawn tractors per se, but, this also covers a lot of the bigger tractors as well, where you should start off with your diagnosis. Well, this is the way I do it. Other people do it in other different ways, but it really depends on what problems you're having. Now, if it's a starting problem, okay, there's really 4 basic components to your starting system. Your battery, your solenoid, your starter, and your ignition switch. You can have a bad starter where the motor doesn't want to crank over at all, or a mechanical problem with your gear where it doesn't want to come up and contact the actual flywheel teeth, so your Bendix could be going bad on you. Or severe damage internally to the starter. Now, starters, typically, if it's a starter problem, unless it's just with the Bendix, you replace it. If it's just a Bendix problem, especially on the Briggs motors, they make the Bendix kits. Just remember, you can't put the metal one on the plastic, and you can't put the plastic on the metal. That's the only big difference when it comes to the Bendix kits. I don't think I've ever had any Bendix problems on Kawasaki, so then again, I don't really work on a lot of the Kawasaki's. For me, I get a lot of the Kohlers, the Briggs, and still got those Tecumsehs out there, folks. Buried under the snowbank next to it is old Craftsman here. That's got a Tecumseh engine. The snowblower behind us, that's got a Tecumseh engine. So, as far as it goes, folks, Tecumseh engines are still out there. But, that's getting a little off track. One of the big things that you're going to want to buy and or have is a battery charger, folks. You would be surprised at how many problems you can actually diagnose and solve with a battery charger, and not one of those smart battery chargers, but the old transformer dumb style ones that just give you current. You'd be surprised at how many problems you can diagnose with one of them. Then, moving up into the range, one thing that you should really procure for yourself is a digital multimeter. I prefer the digital ones. Some of you folks still run the analog, but that's fine. Make sure that you at least have one that'll do your 20 and 200 volts, because you're going to need it. Now, also make sure that you can find one that's got a diode check and ohm meters, ohm check as well, because of the fact that you're going to need to ohm out some things if the resistance is wrong. Yeah, too. But, yeah. Now, third thing, now this is just in my Power Probe kit, You could get a power probe, but get yourself some test lights. They're fairly inexpensive now. Yeah. You know, continuity tester, voltage checks, high voltage check, and if you got the coinage, get yourself a power probe. These things are great for the diagnostics of electronics. Electronics. And you wouldn't think, oh, well, a simple garden tractor with carbureted engine would have electronics problems. If it's got, you know, electric clutch, if it's got things like anti-backfire valves, electric clutch, electronic locking differential, things like that, electric power steering, you're gonna need electronics tools to figure it out. One big thing that I get a lot of, and I hate this because for some reason other shops don't tell their customers this, or the dealers just don't tell them when they buy the unit. Okay, some of your tractors, when you flip the key on and hit the headlights, they just come on, okay? Others, such as this Husqvarna, you have to have the engine running. And the reason for that is that it's actually running directly off of the generator to power the headlights. It's actually got a separate wire for the headlights coming off of the alternating system. I know I said generator, we're going to use these terms pretty loosely, okay? I get it, alternator AC current, generator DC, but digress. When it comes to people, and they say, oh, well, the shop tells me, oh, that's normal, and then the shop doesn't tell them why it's normal. Why is it that these shops are not telling them that it's normal? So, as far as electrical diagnosis goes, also, you gotta play 20 questions with the customer or yourself as to, is it actually wrong? Or is it a normal operation of the unit? Now, headlights like that, they are a normal operation. Another thing, because I've done a few LED conversions on these tractors, especially with the alternator headlight system, people complain, oh, why is it that the lights flicker when I throttle it down? Well, the big reason is because you're dropping your hertz inside of your alternator system to where you're actually noticing the diode turning on and off. Because a diode, as we all should know, is a one-way valve. So when it's all the way up in RPM, the alternator is switching so fast that you don't notice that flicker in the headlights. But when you idle it back and run, you'll notice the flicker. And that's also why, if you've still got your incandescent headlights, you know, your ones with the filament in there, it'll dim down as you throttle it down. Same reason, because it's not making as much voltage as it did up at high idle. That's another thing to think about. When you're checking for alternators output, you always have to check them at the high idle setting, in that 3600 RPM at high idle of the governor system, because they're designed to put out their max voltage at that time. And most of these, unless they've got like the electronic clutch and that, they don't put out more than about 5-10 amps. Your older ones, they'd maybe put out 3 amps. Just the way that it goes. Now, for the ones that are pushing out more amperage past the 10 amps, they have a box. And it's usually located somewhere on the motor. It's a box where your alternator will actually plug in. Now that box can go bad, and that can be why you're not charging. And that's another thing I forgot to mention. When you're getting yourself a DMM or a meter of any kind, make sure that you can actually run AC on it, because of the fact that your charging system, if you have to check your charging system, it's always going to be an AC before it's rectified. So you gotta have something that'll do AC. Now the thing is that everybody thinks that you need massive tools to even consider working on these. The thing is that no, not really. I mean, folks, what I have next to the seat and in the bag, you can pretty much diagnose anything on this tractor and a lot of other bigger tractors for the same reason with all the equipment. The thing is that I've also seen it a lot. They take it to one shop and they get it back and the headlights don't work. Well, here's a simple thing. Because a lot of shops, they'll take the hood off. Make sure that you plug the darn headlight back in for your customer. You know, make sure you plug the headlights back in for your customer. I have had, I don't know why it is, but when it comes to electrical problems, I'd say at least 3 out of 10 are just headlight things, and it's like, no, there's nothing wrong, no, they just forgot to plug your thing in, no, just get the fuck out of my life, you know, you're fine. I digress. But the thing is that always be nice to your customer, okay? Always be nice to your customer if you're working in a shop setting. But another one I see a lot is in the summertime, battery works great. You know, fires tractor up, you know, they can run with it all summer. As soon as winter hits, click, 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 if they can even get the starter to engage. It means that your battery is weak. Now, there's 2 reasons for that. Number one, your charging system is not juicing the battery enough. And that could just be from the something as simple as short starts and stops, start and stop with the engine, you know. Because, like I said, it's only going to charge 5, maybe 10 amps of power. So don't immediately think that it's an alternator problem when it could just be a customer problem. Where you gotta let it really run, or I've seen some of these where people have turned them into pull tractors, where they'll take the deck off and they've got it whenever the heck they just get off the seat. They don't even let it keep running. They'll just get off, let it shut down off of the safety switch, come back, push on the brakes, hit the switch. As soon as it's running, they dump the brake and they go. Very hard on an engine, by the way. Very hard on your transmission as well, and your belt system. Am I 100% completely nice to my equipment? No, as you can see that, I am not. But I try and at least be a little nicer to mine more of the time than a lot of other people. Electrical problems. Generator problems. You can have them, but you gotta check. You gotta find your generator wires in your wire harness. I believe on this one it's gonna be 3 wires coming out, because you're gonna have your one that comes to your headlights, and you're gonna have your negative, well, your neutral, and you're gonna have your positive. So yeah. And the thing is folks, is that with that in mind, you got to realize that not always is the alternator bad. But the thing is that a nice thing about the Briggs motors is that you can put a bigger alternator on them a lot of times without having to do much work other than just figuring out which parts go where. I have suggested that to a few of my customers that, you know, hey, if you're going to do that, maybe we should upgrade your charging system. And then there's also the weird ways of doing it also, but yeah. Now, a second reason why it works in the summer but doesn't work in the winter, you gotta come to your battery. If your battery is old, it can actually be a case of the battery itself is weak, and when you get cold enough, it just loses way too much charge, and it doesn't keep enough charge to keep enough power on hand to even start the motor. But as soon as it warms back up, it becomes happy again, and it starts the tractor just fine. I've had that happen to me several times, not just on customers' equipment, but also on mine, where I'll run it a couple seasons. Yeah, it works great in the summer. As soon as I want to do anything with it in the winter, doesn't want to start. And the thing is that a lot of times what I've done there is that I'll pull the battery out, I'll bring it inside, let it sit in the warmth of the house overnight, put it on the battery charger, let it sit there for a day, put it back in the tractor, and it'll fire off. It'll make the tractor fire off. But the thing is that at the end of the day, it's a bad battery. You're better off, if you can, just get a new battery and be done with it. Now, another part of your system is your big, massive solenoid that runs from the battery. It's got, because you've got a cable, and it's going to run from your battery to the solenoid. The solenoid then is going to control whether the starter engages or not. Now, if the solenoid's bad, usually you just get a screwdriver out and you click it across the terminals and you'll find out if it's bad or not. But the thing is that it's not always the solenoid itself. That's where having that nice battery charger with the ability to run raw current into it, you can take the solenoid off the tractor, or heck, if you can get to it easy enough, you can hook the battery charger right to that solenoid, make it click engage, and if you can hear it click engage, the mechanical parts inside are good. And then what you do is you take your DMM across the two big posts and ohm out the sorry folks, it's getting a little cold out here. You'd ohm out your solenoid. Well, if your solenoid is good, and your battery's good, then you gotta check, is it one of the safety switches? Is it the actual starting switch? That's where it gets a little bit more complicated. And that's why you need a DMM with an ohm check. Because you're going to be unplugging safety switches and turning them on and off to find out, is it a safety switch? Well, if it's not a safety switch, you might want to check the wiring a little bit. From essentially the battery through the safety switches to that solenoid. Now, usually what you can do to make it quick and dirty and fast, try and figure out a way to rubber band this ignition switch open, and what it'll do is that it should energize the whole system. If you've got all the safeties off, you know, like you push the clutch in and, you know, set the parking brake, you've got it like a brick or something on your seat, you should be able to go through. A lot of people don't like back probing. I can do back probing. I guess it's something that if you're just wanting it fast and done now, go for the back probing. And see where that voltage is. Because wherever it's not, where it was last in that chain, that's where the break in the wire is, or break in the system is. You can almost definitively cut the rest of the system out. And if you wanted to even go further than that, you can ohm check from that dead point to where the solenoid wire would be, and if it's reading closed circuit, then you know for a fact it's somewhere between where it was dead and the battery. So there's a lot of little tricks that you can do. Starter's actually a little. It's easy, but it's not easy. This is where typically I would get the battery, my jumper pack out, and hook it straight to the battery, hook it straight to the positive cable, find a nice good ground on the motor, flip the switch. If it cranks over, well, okay, great, it's not a starter issue electrically. But that doesn't mean that you don't have mechanical problems with such as your Bendix. Or on some of the Kohlers where they've actually got a automotive style starter that flings the Bendix out like a car starter or automotive style starter would be. That fling out, that solenoid there can be bad. So, a lot to actually think about when it comes to these, but it's more time consuming than it is difficult. But it's really up to your skill level how far you can go in the world of your small engine repair. So, I'm getting cold, folks. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.